Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to the newest Be Better Media production. I'm here with the incomparable Wendy Jones, founder of Be Better Media, and the host of the Option podcast, Jason Dibelius. My name is Ashley Clark, and this is Undivided.
So excited to do this show with the two of you. We have been sitting courtside, oceanside, watching volleyball for years, and we have so much more to talk about. Things that matter in life and sport and politics and all the things that we want to share with different perspectives and just make it feel like a really great dinner table conversation.
Well, this is something I wanted to do for some time in my professional and personal life. Doing things out of spontaneity, as you guys know, is not an uncommon thing. But for this is a long time coming, and man, I can't wait.
Yes, I feel privileged to be here with both of you to talk about anything and everything that affects our culture and our daily lives. It's important to me that we set a positive example for how to have thoughtful conversations with different perspectives. In future episodes, we will explore hot-button topics in the world of current events, sports, entertainment, politico, wellness, and tackle these topics from a fresh set of eyes, coming from a place of objectiveness, political homelessness, and critical thinking skills. In a world where people are looking for answers to be fed to them, this is the show where we're going to constantly pose the question, optimistic that we, along with you, the viewers, can answer some of these questions together.
Well, you guys, with the heaviness of the news cycle on any given day, there are a few things that make springtime better than March Madness. Coupled with the return of Ted Lasso, and amidst so many stories that feel like the world has gone mad, sports remind us that there are always reasons to prepare and to believe. So I remember coming into club volleyball practice in 1992, and my team just lit up around Christian Leitner's buzzer-beating shot that took them to the Final Four over Kentucky. And March Madness has been a thing in my life ever since. So every spring, no matter what's going on in the world and the things that get us down and all the news cycles, this tournament will remind you about human greatness and the power of a backstory and coaching wisdom and guys who have been dreaming of these moments, and when they get there, it changes their lives, and then it changes ours. And this tournament started off with a bang, and I can't wait for this weekend because the Final Four is coming. But man, the first round buzzer-beating victory of Furman, Princeton's run into the Sweet 16, Fairleigh Dickinson's upset of Purdue, gosh, and then of course the FAU Owls making it all the way into the Final Four, and I'm really hoping they make it into the final because I don't know that they can beat UConn, but God, I'm always rooting for the underdog. So that's the thing about March Madness that people just need to remember. It teaches you to be prepared, to always look for the opportunity in life, and then just sit back and relax and stop watching the news. Check out March Madness. It is so much better. So what do you guys think? March Madness fans?
Not me, not very much.
Well, I'm a big March.
Did I convince you maybe?
I think if you don't like March Madness, you don't have a sports pulse. I mean, if you take into consideration all the other sports where like there's and in volleyball, we met through volleyball, and there's double elimination tournaments, there's pool play. So you do have a cushion to lose in this heightened situation dedicated to one weekend or that Thursday or Saturday. And March Madness, it's lose or go home, and sometimes the better team that day wins. And when you said the Owls, I did something I didn't know. When you said the Owls, I was thinking Temple. I was thinking, okay, that's a story program. You know, that coach has already left, and or left us. And when you said the FAU Owls, I said, come on, shut the front door. You know, UConn, I'm not terribly surprised because even though the Big East has been watered down, where a lot of teams have left, a great percentage of the teams at the end of the day or at the end of the year in the Final Four, there's always a Big East team in conversation. Villanova, you know, has been there a few years. UConn, a decade and a half ago, beat Duke in the finals. I was actually inspired, very much like you, when Christian Leitner took that shot in 1992. That inspired me to watch March Madness and follow it avidly.
Yeah, and you know what I left out is that my second born is actually named after Luke Walton because he was born in March and I was watching March Madness, 9 months pregnant, and Luke Turner is named after Luke Walton.
I didn't know that.
Did Luke Walton call that or something? Was he calling?
He was playing in Arizona.
Oh.
In 2002.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I would definitely say that my biggest draw to a March Madness game would be the underdog story. Like, I love the concept of people being prepared and gritty and resilient in the way that they approach their team and their sport. And obviously the March Madness and the bracket, because you never know what's going to happen. Like you said, the best team that shows up that day will win. And that's what matters.
Well, and the other thing I'm thinking of now is how to contrast the media coverage of something like March Madness versus what we see in a 24-hour news cycle. I want to see, like, you can't just turn off the game when it's done. I don't care who wins. If you don't see those interviews afterwards, if you don't see the way those coaches or the players are approaching their coach and giving them hugs, and you don't hear the coach's speech in the locker room, and they cover that stuff. They tell you these stories. I don't think we're getting those stories in the regular news. So that's another reason I like March Madness.
Yeah, and I think from the other end, I mean, on one end, you have these small schools getting all this media attention, national spotlight, which is a given for the spectators and consumers who just keep coming. But on the other end, like, picture Fairleigh Dickinson University, right? Picture maybe the men's volleyball coach. He's a first-year coach here. It's called France. He's going to the locker room to set up, and all of a sudden there's all these cameras and everything's all around him. He's like, okay, what's going on? Oh yeah, wow, we won. So when you think from the other perspective, not just the players who are getting all this attention, but the other sports where just this media is just coming in mass that changes the demographic of their everyday operations. It must be exciting for them too.
Yeah.
For sure.
So right there is a perfect example of a different perspective on March Madness, right? I'm not a big fan, but thank you for reminding me that we all have inspiring examples around us in the world. We just need to look around and pay attention. We'll be right back after this short commercial. Stay tuned.
I hope you're enjoying this new Be Better Media production of Undivided, produced by my company, Be Better Media. To see the world of why we are striving to share inspired edutainment, I invite you to please check us out at bebettermedia.tv. That's bebettermedia.tv.
Welcome back to Undivided. It's time to hand the floor over to Jason. Jason, what's on your Jadar this week?
Well, it's all about Elon Musk. When Elon Musk purchased Twitter, there was a predetermined notion that whether Twitter made him money or not, there was something else at stake that hung in the consumer balance. Yeah, I have an issue with free speech. Elon Musk promised free speech, and even if he didn't promise free speech, I had everything to gain and nothing to lose from that. So not only did Elon Musk promise free speech, he revealed Twitter files on the federal agencies that were censoring our free speech. Could you, the vaccine doesn't prevent transmission. We can't get rid of that. Gain of function test came from a lab and not from a bat. People don't need to be knowing about that, right? If you already got COVID, you have strong immunity, if not stronger immunity than if you got the vaccine. We don't deserve to know that. And again, I said it before and I'll say it again, these things pissed me off. And all at the behest of the federal government, who are control freaks, and all of the behest of big pharma, who stood to make billions of dollars. They made $100 billion in 2022. They made $36 billion in 2021. They made $33 billion in 2000. So they get rich. We turn against each other, and people are dying for all the wrong reasons. To put it in simple terms, the Democrats warned that hate speech is back, and the Republicans can now celebrate that happy days are here again. Coming into Twitter, it was well documented that there were some rumblings that some federal agencies were, and I'm using my words carefully here, strongly urging other social media companies to remove, shadow ban, or censor via algorithm, particularly material that was inconsistent with their findings or narrative on various subject matter. For example, as late as August 2022, Mark Zuckerberg on the Joe Rogan podcast had admitted that the FBI requested that he restrict posters who were sharing things that could be election misinformation, highlighting the Hunter laptop story in the New York Post. Now, if you're just a casual user, indirect censorship from the government on Twitter could easily fall into the category of conspiracy rabbit hole. After all, Twitter seemed free enough. It literally had adult film material on their platform. And the whole thought that a company that permits material which brings new meaning to the term sexual curiosity would suspend or ban someone for saying, COVID didn't come from a bat. That's laughable. However, if you're the one actually purchasing Twitter, citing as one of your main pretexts that free speech is being limited, this falls under high priority. Twitter had had previous problems in other areas, highlighting the $150 million settlement after the Department of Justice and FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, said Twitter failed to disclose to their users that their phone numbers and emails were being targeted for advertising. So it became one of his missions to make sure, however this turns out, free speech is virtually worth the price. Jeff Brown of the Brownstone Research Group had said it best. Everyone knew that it was happening, but they just didn't have the confession from Twitter that it was true. In fact, Twitter executives denied that this is practiced on many occasions. That's no longer the case. What we have learned is that the Twitter files have now produced evidence of the removal of accounts. This has also included accounts that shared factual and true information. And very much like Jeff Brown asserted, these were agencies persuading Twitter and other social media networks to suspend, ban, remove posts, and even shadow ban them. The method of making people's posts invisible to other Twitter handles, as well as disabling one's ability to comment or retweet, all without the original poster knowing it was happening to them. To some, this is not a story. Again, it's a nothing burger by a private company that is not beholden to the First Amendment. This free speech doesn't apply. They can do whatever they want. But where it goes beyond the private company's shield is the involvement of government agencies, including the FBI and the White House. These agencies have bartered, bullied, and in the FBI's case, paid in the form of over $3.4 million to mute, censor, or ban participants who are not following the narrative. From taking down stories about the Hunter Biden laptop, to people who were labeled Russian bots, to pretty much everything COVID-related that was not parroting the sentiment of the mainstream media. Censorship was in full swing. There can be a healthy debate on the innocence of censoring things that were thought to be false in the past, that are now found to be true in the present. We learned something more extraordinary. We now learned that the truth was not the bottom line here. We now know that according to recent Twitter file releases, Twitter was directed to remove, ban, or censor things that weren't just false, but things that were actually true and factual, but at the same time would promote hesitancy and the trust of the medical narrative. Now I'm going to read from a screenshot as independent journalist author David Zweig summed it up. Twitter rigged the debate around COVID by A, censoring info that was true but inconvenient to the US government policy, B, by discrediting doctors and other experts who disagreed, and C, by suppressing ordinary users, including some sharing CDC's own data. As Matt Taibbi said in the Twitter files regarding the Virality Project at Stanford University, we'll get into later, this story is important for two reasons. One, as Orwellian proof of concept, the Virality Project was a smash success. Government, academia, and an oligarchy of would-be corporate competitors organized quickly behind a secret, unified effort to control political messaging. And two, it accelerated the evolution of digital censorship, moving it from judging truth, untruth, to a new, scarier model, openly focusing on political narrative at the expense of fact. The House committee hearing earlier this month, it seemed that there was more time attempting to go after the journalist instead of the validity of what was discovered. Attacks that on its best legs were non sequiturs, and on its worst legs, just outright untrue ad hominem attacks. I'm going to play some clips from the hearing. Listen to this.
This isn't just a matter of what data was given to these so-called journalists before us now. There are many legitimate questions about where Musk got the financing to buy Twitter.
Ranking Member Plaskett, I'm not a so-called journalist. I've won the National Magazine Award, the I.F. Stone Award for Independent Journalism, and I've written 10 books, including 4 New York Times bestsellers.
Now, I'm not asking you to put a dollar figure on it, but it's quite obvious that you've profited from the Twitter files. You hit the jackpot on that Vegas slot machine to which you referred. That's true, isn't it?
I've also reinvested
You've made some, no. Is it true that you have profited since you were the recipient of the Twitter files? You've made money. Yes or no?
I think it's probably a wash, honestly.
No, you have made money that you did not have before, correct?
But I've also spent money that I didn't have before. I just hired a whole group of people to investigate.
Patently obvious answer, reclaiming my time. Attention is a powerful drug. Eyeballs, money, prominence, attention, all of it points to problems with accuracy and credibility.
I would like to clear up, some things that have been misrepresented. Not one of us has actually been paid to do any of this work. We've all, traveled on our own. We've hired our personnel on our own, and I've just hired a pretty large team to investigate this issue out of my own pocket.
Mr. Schellenbeck, do you believe that the Russians engaged in a hack and release campaign with respect to the damaging information they released regarding the Clinton campaign?
To the best of my awareness, that is what happened.
Okay,
Yes.
fair enough. Thank you.
That's not the same thing
The reason
as influencing.
I understand.
Also, that material was true.
Yeah.
Look.
That's it.
Oh my God.
So the reason why I play this is because there's some things like when I'm conversating with you, like you might be like, "What the hell's wrong with getting paid for actually doing work?" I mean,
Right.
Journalists aren't. They're not sitting out there. They're not sitting out in Starbucks saying we'll work for food, right? So
Not to mention coming from someone in Congress who's
Yeah.
making money for
Yeah.
all kinds of different things.
Agreed.
And
I mean,
in all
well,
kinds
the
of-
first person, Plaskett, is not even a real congressperson. She's Virgin Islands
I
delegate.
know.
And she took 3 installments of $2,700 from Epstein, and didn't give it back until the media brought it up and shamed her. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz was the DNC for Hillary that had to resign because emails leaked that she was rigging the election against Bernie Sanders, already given the questions and this and that. So the blonde hair girl, the white hair girl that was talking about money is a big thing or
Right.
whatever, she resigned and then later became Hillary's campaign manager right after she resigned.
For her to say
So, yeah.
attention is a powerful
Now,
drug.
the reason why this is important is because if you're a DNC or RNC chair, you're not supposed to be biased towards any nominee until the
They're in
person's
the-
nominated. Once they're
general,
nominated,
yeah.
be biased as fuck.
Right.
But during the process, you're not supposed to do that. So when the Twitter file dust is settled, the horrific and uncomfortable question that many have avoided asking will inevitably rear its ugly head. And that question is this: if these federal agencies have in fact found an end around to legally violating our First Amendment rights, has a totalitarian state all but arrived? Now, Wendy, we talked about this earlier on, we actually made some jokes about like, wait, he did journalism and he got paid for it? So.
This is how we make money in America. We have a skill, get paid for it. Being called a so-called journalist, and how calm he remains.
Did you see his
And the
reaction? He looked at his friend
condescending
like...
yeah, but the condescending tone coming from the congressmen and women sitting on high. Like, I can't.
And had to be shamed into giving that back. So these guys get on this bridge of more moral aptitude and quickly fall off when you do some research on them.
Well, and the audacity of her to call him a so-called journalist, like, okay, a journalist is supposed to present facts and perspective. So who...
He's an award-winning journalist.
Yeah, and the thing that you had talked about with, the fact that they were censoring stuff that people were posting from the CDC website, like, that is supposed to be where we're supposed to go for our health information from the government. So why are you censoring something that's being cited from what's supposed to be a reliable source?
Right.
The reliable source.
Well, Debbie Wasserman Schultz also said that he's kind of given up his moral foundation by testifying for Republicans, which I also found bizarre because Matt Taibbi is a Democrat and Schellenberger voted for Biden. So,
But none of that stuff matters. It
mattered
shouldn't
but it mattered
but
to
does-
them.
Yeah.
It mattered.
And yet you're getting painted into a corner, like is always happening these days. People want to paint you into a corner to say you believe this, this, and this, and that you must be ill-intentioned and being led by whoever you voted for, and that's not the case.
And I guess the reason why I brought this Jadar up is because it pisses me off that they're talking about a legal issue. We're talking about a federal agency trying to find an end around the Constitution. Look, we got a lot in the news happening right now. We got transgender stuff. We got people getting shot at. We have all of this stuff. But once you have the ability to make people not talk about these things, it's not. This isn't the United States of America.
Right. And one more thing we haven't covered. The IRS showed up on Matt Taibbi's
That's right! The IRS showed up the same morning when he was on his way to the hearings.
House call by the IRS.
Just show
You think
up.
that's random?
She showed up like a UFC fighter being drug tested. Just a random drug test. Go, hey, here's the bottle, and Matt Taibbi's like, what are you doing here? So, but I didn't like that they tried to make this a moral arena, and I didn't like that the people who cited as a pretext morale and honesty and integrity were the worst of the worst. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a former DNC chair, was forced to resign because emails came out that she was steering the direction towards Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders, funneling the debate questions ahead of time amongst a ton of other things. So I find it ironic that someone investigating emails that came out that were true had emails that came out for her that were true. So I guess we call her the full circle.
It's a perfect example of my textbook line these days. You have other ones, but I don't know how people sleep at night. Yeah. Like, how do you get up and say these things and know that you are...
She said he hit the jackpot.
You have more in your closet than either any of these journalists sitting here talking about our First Amendment rights.
Now, it doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you're on, but the definition to me of hitting the jackpot is being the DNC chair, resigning, and then being, right after you resign, you're Hillary's campaign manager. That is big bucks. You know what I'm saying? You have the wind at your back like Superman to Lois Lane, and I guess she would know something about hitting the jackpot and making money.
The elitist political machine at work.
Wow, what a great conversation we're having, and it's definitely no surprise. When we get together, we just can shoot and talk, and there's just really good perspective going on here. Usually we're going to start this show with a current event, but today we're going to close with the most current, heartbreaking, and far too common tragedy of gun violence in America. As most of you have seen on your newsfeed, Monday morning around 10 a.m. Eastern Time, there was a shooting at the Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee that killed 3 children and 3 adults. We are just not addressing the root cause of mental health and the mental health crisis in our country. So as most of you have probably seen, there was a shooting at an elementary school in Nashville. Details have come out about the shooter, about the people who have lost their lives, including adults and children. And I just want to present to you guys the questions, like no matter what side that you are sitting on, whether you are for more gun control, whether you are in the mental health space, whether you want to put an armed guard at the doors of schools. The question I want to give you is, what person has, in a healthy mental state, caused harm on somebody else? Who has gone out and bought a gun and went to an elementary school to shoot up staff and students? I don't see that in the news. I don't see how anybody in their right mind could have walked into a school with 1 gun, let alone 5 different guns, and cause harm on other people. What are your guys' thoughts about Nashville?
I mean, Wendy looked like she wanted to go first.
No, you go.
I look, like everybody else, I'm very, very heartbroken that no matter what someone's political ideology is, no matter what people think about gun control, no matter what people think about violence, it seems almost Mancurian that lately it's been the kids. Mm-hmm. Right? I made a joke with my wife about, like, why can't these shootings happen in bowling alleys and theaters like the old days? What is this crazy trend that it's school shootings, and whatever acts someone may have to grind. I mean, mental health notwithstanding, what the heck does a 9-year-old have to do with all this? What do 9-year-olds have to do with someone's grievances, Which goes full circle to what you're talking about, which we talked about before the show, the common denominator of mental health. Mm-hmm. If you went on social media and said, can we have a conversation about mental health? You know what they'll tell you? They'll tell you, we don't have time to talk about mental health. We need to get these guns off the street. And then, what happens there? People listen to what their political station says. They seep to their aisle, and nothing gets done. Until the next shooting where people say we need to take guns, and the other side will say the good guy with a gun stops the bad guy with a gun, and nothing gets done.
Well, but you're not addressing the mental health problem in that. Like, okay, you take guns off the street or you put more reform on them, but the people who want them, the people with these mental health issues, they're going to find a way to inflict harm. You take the guns away, they're going to go find them on the black market. They're going to go down to Mexico, wherever they can get them, and get them. Or they're going to find another way to inflict the harm because it's what's happening inside of them or in their lives. It's the root cause that you have to go and look at, not the object or the action per se, but what is going on in their brain? What is going on in their life, in their community, in their relationships that puts them in such a dissolute and desperate place that they go hurt other people, especially kids. I mean, it's not...
And who are we to not be lifting up our eyes and looking for people who are struggling? We are not catching people who are struggling. And it's hard to come in and say I'm struggling. But if we have, and I do think there's some information out there about things that this shooter posted, that they were struggling. Yeah. How are we not catching that stuff?
And I think that goes full circle what you were talking about. Mental health seems to be the connection of a lot of things. I mean, I'm a veteran. Homeless veterans is attached to mental health. Suicides, talking people off the bridge. This is all mental health. And gun violence is one of the many categories, though the most extreme. You said how many people of sound mind are actually shooting up a school. And I guess when it comes to guns, and like you said, if you think that making gun laws to make it more difficult to get a gun will stop some of these people from doing these things, I think that's where we're all sadly mistaken, or we're all coming up short on where we think we can do about it. And it's and I'd like to finish by saying this, and I'll give you guys the floor. It's such an awkward conversation because it's the epitome of what we're doing here with this. I'm not pretending to have the answers. You don't know the answers. Wendy sure as heck might not pretend to have the answers, but to constantly stay in this dialogue and ask and constantly pose the question, which is what we said in the beginning of this. Hopefully, maybe someone out there, we can find a way to all answer this together.
I would say the only thing that I know for a fact that we can do and the audience out there can do is look at the things in your life that you want to improve and take agency to be better in those areas, in your finances, in your exercise, in your nutrition, in your relationships. And if each one of us look in the mirror and work on ourselves, we're going to find a better overarching community and country.
Yeah, and I also think we just need to people stop listening because they're sad. And that's a real moral conflict there, because when we are sad and we stop listening to each other and we start going to the knee-jerk corners of assault rifle bans or and gun control, people who are not trained to use guns should be scared of guns. So how can we get better training? Most of these shootings happen in places where people know that they are not armed. Schools are not, they're not armed. Movie theaters, whether there's a concealed carry permit, those people are trained. I am not trained to use a gun.
Me neither.
I need to be.
I am, but...
I know, and that's good. And the thing is, law-abiding citizens in America who have good intentions, I would never use a gun to hurt somebody. But we have to listen, and we also have to confront our own fears instead of just pointing the finger at somebody else and saying, solve my problem for me. How are we all going to do it? It happens in conversation.
And I think that's what I was getting to. Ashley said something really good about self-examination, taking care of yourself. But you stumbled onto something I think that's just as important, if not more. Like Ashley, you mentioned taking care of yourself is a real thing, and we're not. To me, that doesn't apply as much to mental health because one's preservation of life is the very essence of sanity, right? People that want to kill themselves and people that want to kill other people. You have to be a little bit cray-cray. So I think it's more to do with taking the time of how your behavior affects other people. You know what I'm saying? We can go the next 5 episodes and talk about bullying. We can go the next 5 episodes of belittling someone because their hair is funny, or because they're this, or because they're black, or they're trans, or they're too short. Like if you're tall, fee, fi, fo, fum. Funny to you, not funny to them, right? I'm mixed. I've been called Oreo cookie and a bunch of names I won't say on camera. Funny to them, and funny now, but not funny when I was a kid. So there are some things that everyone thinks you should man up and handle or whatever, because that's part of life. But there's also some things where we, as human beings, if you see something, I'm not talking about an explosive package when I say if you see something, say something. I'm talking about if you see an explosive person.
Yeah, I agree. And that looking in the mirror for me helps us as individuals be more aware of ourselves, and then we are better prepared to be aware of our situations in the community and other people. So the purpose of Undivided is not just to hear from the 3 of us, but to create a dialogue of many perspectives that extend far beyond this room. We want to hear from you. Send your thoughts and questions to info@bebettermedia.tv or leave your comments below, and we'll catch up next week on episode 2 of Undivided.